Thank you, everyone, for your time today and for your interest in what all of us have to share on automation, agility, and AI. My presentation today is going to focus very specifically on automation, and it's going to be a bit of a practical overview of what we're doing and what the driving forces are. So let me just start by saying that we are not new to automation and technology in research. Some of the changes that took us from in-person to mail to online and now to mobile have evolved. They've evolved our modes more than our methods. And so this next wave of technology evolution is forcing us to change our methods more. And there are some driving forces and some restraining forces for that. So I thought I'd just introduce you to Lewin's force field model. What this shows you is that with any evolution in technology, there are always forces for change and forces resisting change. And then there are business issues that are really driving the change, and then there are business concerns that are restraining. These forces work in a beautiful balance, forcing the change not to go too quickly, but also forcing us not to move too slowly. And so these forces work for and against the change. And eventually what happens is that the restraining forces are solved through technology, and the driving forces use the technology to push the agenda forward. So the automation is actually already being pretty widely used in market research, but it's mostly been used in analysis to date. So you can see here, this is a chart from the GRIT report, the most recent GRIT report. You can see that automation is being used in charting and infographics, and analysis of text data, analysis of survey data, social media data, and even some in sampling. This next wave of automation is actually aimed at the creation of the surveys themselves, more about sampling automation and more about storytelling automation and insights automation. And the rationale for these, the forces that are driving this change, the forces are speed of the consumer changes. The consumers are changing faster than our methods are. Their adoption of mobile is forcing us to change more quickly and be able to change our survey questioning techniques and our data collection techniques to adopt to the way that they're willing to share information and the way that they're willing to answer questions, and even the functionality of the devices that they'll share their information with us on. So the speed of the consumer changes is a driving force, but also cost and profitability needs. With that kind of speed, if you have to do everything manually, it can be quite expensive, and cost benefits are constantly at the top of the list of things that technology can help solve. The Internet of Things is providing us a ton of data. We're trying to figure out how to use it and then use that data to replace some of the questions that we've asked in the past, save our questions for things that we can't find in other ways. And our members, our participants, our research community is saying, don't ask me things you should already know. This is tied to this driving force of data everywhere. There really is data everywhere, and pulling it together and using that data to tell broader stories. What all this extra data means, and all these extra ways of collecting data and observing people means, is that we have so much data, we can get lost in just integrating, harnessing the data, and it's eroding the time that we have to think about the data, to think strategically. And so automation is needed to come in and make those tasks less time-consuming for the professionals and leave them with more time to actually act on the data. And then finally, a need for benchmarking. There are a lot of things that we call custom today that are not all that custom, and there are a lot of times when we do a custom piece of work when it would actually be better to do something more standardized so that you could benchmark it within your own organization across future and previous exercises that are very similar. And so there's a big drive in some of the large CPG companies, large financial companies, to standardize and to benchmark more. Now, so those are the driving forces. The resisting forces are, you've heard them all. There's this desire for trending and comparability. If I change it, if I change my survey design, I'll lose my trending. And so there are the competing forces of you need to change because you're becoming less representative, and I can't change because I'll lose my trending. They're going head to head. There are cannibalization concerns. If I automate this and I take my fingers off of it, then it's going to cannibalize some of my price points. But one of the best quotes I've ever heard was given to me a few years ago that said, "Cannibalize yourself before someone else cannibalizes you." And so this automation trend is going to happen, and we need to be very careful not to put our head in the sand and allow someone else to do that cannibalization to us. There's the fear of dumbing down research. This is what I probably hear most often. We need our minds. We do need our minds, but we need our minds on high, lofty things. We don't need them on things that we should actually have really gotten good at by now, and we don't need them on basic things. And there's a trick that I'm going to talk to you about building the mind of the researcher into the tech, so that you're actually lifting and eroding mistakes and making things better when you do this well, as opposed to actually dumbing it down. There's the fear of making a bad decision. If I do this wrong, if I automate, if I don't really get into the nitty-gritty, I might make a bad decision. That's always a risk, whether you automate or don't automate. Then there's the fear of sameness. If we all do it the same, do I bring anything special to the table? The specialness should come in the high thinking, not in the pieces that will be automated. And then there's the fear of reduced quality, which, as I said earlier, is actually something that will that can be improved. Quality can be improved through standardization, less error, less opportunity for error. So these forces are competing against each other. This is not new, though. This type of automation and forces for and against change has happened in the past. You can think about ad tech, marketing tech, marketing and ad tech together, mad tech, and now MR tech. There are some analogs between what the ad tech and the MarTech and the mad tech people have gone through with this programmatic feel and to what we're going through now in market research. It's our turn. And there are also some really important differences, and sometimes we talk more about the similarities than we do about the differences, and they're both very important. The similarities are programmatic, speed, volume, velocity, and this transparency. As we go programmatic, you can see more about the inventory, more about the price. You can be a bit more in the driver's seat. There's more buyer power. And in the ad tech and MarTech, you can also see that they had premium layers. They had lower quality, medium quality, higher quality opportunities, and they could plug and play those options based on their specific research needs. All of those apply, especially to the sampling piece of what we're doing, the sampling automation, and then also to the survey design. But there are some really important differences. The differences we have with ad tech, MarTech, and mad tech, they were mostly concerned with eyeballs and driving massive volume of eyeballs to things. In research, we have to worry about, we're usually working in a sampling world, and so making sure the sample that we're working from is representative. The data that we're harnessing represents the audience that we're trying to make a decision about, trying to find the places of bias. And by the way, bias in our own minds, much less bias in the sampling. And so one of the things that AI and automation can do is help you see things through technology, because the technology doesn't have the bias of our past experiences and the things going on in our head and our own hypotheses that can tend to steer results. Using technology can remove some of our own biases as we interpret. But so bias is a concern and a difference that we have to work through. Data driving marketing and strategy. The data that we're using is driving big decisions. And so when we're using this data to make big decisions, the price of mistakes can be much, much higher. And then finally, but very importantly, the research participants. The people that we're usually trying to automate around, we need them to stay engaged. We need them to keep giving us data. We need them to keep coming back and answering questions. So we have to be super cognizant of their experience as we go along. Some of these differences do apply to ad tech and MarTech and mad tech, but to a higher degree, they are a bigger concern in MR, where we're trying to make universe claims and decisions against those claims. So with that in mind, the key that we've seen to success is to build the mind of the researcher into the technology. Don't just build quick tools that are dumb tools. Build really wise, smart tools. And Bruce hit on some of this earlier in his presentation. Bruce said that automation is integrated real-time data collection, and it is exactly that. Integrating not only data points, but integrating research expertise and research acumen into your automation tools. So the things that we did with our hands in the past, this is the way to think about it. We're not trying to replace the mind of the researcher. We're trying to replace the hands of the researcher so that the mind has more time to operate. Our clients are saying, we don't want to pay you for your doing hands. We want to pay you for your thinking minds. Help me make sure I sample well. Help me make sure my survey is good. Yes, do that, but then help me interpret, help me storytell, enable me to make really great decisions that are going to change organizational and consumer behavior on the other side of this. So when we think about automation, we're using the SAVE technique. Embracing automation will save you time, money, and clients. Automation takes time that you're spending doing manual things and gives you that time back. You save money through not having people sitting around doing things that machines should be able to do. And then it will save you clients, because if you don't automate, someone else will, and they will move to that because they will get better outcomes. So what does SAVE stand for? Standardization first. Standardization is the key. Finding things that you know are repetitive and redundant. Things like we have a client who does a lot of concept studies, and everyone was being treated as a snowflake. They're able to quickly standardize the concept studies that they do at their company and create a form that says, here is the standard way that we're going to run concept studies across our entire organization. You can do that in lots of different areas. So take something that you do a lot of and that you tend to treat each one as a snowflake and standardize it. Once you've standardized it, you can quickly create an app for it. We have lots of apps that we've created at this point for concept tests and brand tests and brand health and in-home usage. So you can create an app for it. We've created some standard apps that we think are really great best practice. Some of our clients come in and say, that's great, but I want to create our own version of that app. And so we'll help them create an app for their use case. And then when you have an app, the next thing you do is you say, okay, here's my standard app for the way I want to ask these questions, the way I want to collect this data. What other data do I want to bring into the story? What other kind of data will I need when I'm trying to create a whole storyline to make a decision? And so think about the data that you're going to integrate. Are you going to integrate transaction data? Are you going to integrate third-party data, pharmaceutical data? What other kinds of data do you want to bring in? Social media data? What's going to help you tell a full story? So you standardize, you appify, you integrate, and then you create some very quick visualization. And so there's all sorts of great visualization. This is where we've probably spent the most time as an industry on automation. But I'll tell you, and here's an example, there are some really good automation and visualization out there, but there are some bad ones too. We left this one on top specifically to show you that this top visualization is actually pretty not great. If you think about this, a whole person, it should total 100%, but then when you look at the percentages, they total quite a bit more than 100%. And you've got leaders at the top, at the mind, which seems great, but then you've got creative at the feet. And what does creative have to do with feet? So you have to be really good with your visualization, create visualization that is pertinent to the data that you're trying to build a story around, and then you can reuse some of those visualization tools. So the SAVE method is standardize, appify, integrate, and visualize. And I wanted to give you a quick case study on this. This is a brand health research study. We had a client who came to us and said, we want to do brand health. This client actually invested pretty heavily in their core markets, but was not spending a lot of money in their ancillary markets, in their emerging markets, because of the cost of doing custom work. So enabling them to do something very quick, very automated, allowed them to go into their secondary and tertiary markets and do brand health studies that they couldn't have done in a heavy price tag custom world. So we standardized a brand health study for them, and you can see here's the types of things that would go into the templated survey. You've got your demographics, and then you have your main survey questions: unaided awareness, aided awareness, brand familiarity. Then you have some overall brand satisfaction. This particular app was built with mostly 5-point scales, but you can build it with any kind of scale, and it still has some open ends, and then any demographics not needed were sort of towards the back. So we created a very specific standardized template that they could use across market. The next thing we did was we created a fill-in-the-blank form, or in the U.S. you might be familiar with Mad Libs, where you just kind of go in and put in the nouns and the verbs. And so this fill-in-the-blank form allows them to go through and create their survey by just filling in a few blanks. What do you want to call the project? What's your research objective? What are some of your project and audience details? What is the product category you're testing, and what is your brand name, and list your 5 key competitors, and actually takes that information, pops it right into the app that's already been created, the standardized survey program that's already been created in a fill-in-the-blank format. It just takes a few seconds. The next thing we did was we said, okay, what other kind of data are you going to want to tie into this brand health, so we can build the rows and the columns for that now. Their customer data, their transaction data, their third-party data, some behavioral data, the survey data, so they have a holistic data set. And finally, we created the standardized visualization for them. This is an example of a visualization that we created specifically for this brand health, and you can see you've got quite a few tabs across the top. And so they're able to run this study in markets across the world, and they can get a very standard and very quick and very budget-friendly brand health tracker for all of their emerging markets. We're doing things like this in concept tests for CPG companies, doing apps for all of their concept tests being done the same way. Their brand managers can quickly go in, run a concept test by filling in the blanks, be in field and out of field in just a couple days. So the moral of the story is that change is coming. Automation is emerging. We're automating some of the things that really shouldn't require heavy consulting. And so there are changes coming. And a bend in the road isn't the end of the road unless you fail to make the turn. So make some of these automation turns with us. Reach out to us if you'd like some advice, and we're happy to help. And I will open up the floor to questions.